All right, so my name is Rachel Grashow. I am the Director of Epidemiological Research Initiatives for the Football Players' Health Study. And my role today is I'm going to talk about our framework for understanding player health. And it's really predicated on this idea of whole player, whole life. For some disclosures, folks should know that we are funded by the NFLPA, but we want to be really clear that there is a very strong firewall between them and us. So they don't tell us what to study, when to study, where to publish. That's what we do. We share no data and no funding with the NFL. And if you want to know any more of our disclosures, they're online. So I won't get into that now. So the first thing I wanted to do was talk about our general perception or the dominant narrative around player health. And it looks like this. The idea is that there are experiences associated with professional football, including head injury. And the idea is that that changes the brain and mental health over time, and that leads to cognitive dysfunction and decline. This is a story, you can go to the next one, that probably looks pretty familiar. This is the story of CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a very real condition that can only be diagnosed after death on autopsy. But the story about CTE, and this sort of holds the market share of, I think, kitchen table conversations, press, funding, is that, you can go to the next one, is that there's really 3 Ps. It's pervasive, everyone has it. It's permanent, there's nothing you can do about it, and it's progressive, and then it's just gonna get worse. And this should look pretty familiar as the way we're thinking about player health so far. Go next one. But we're trying to change the conversation and say, yes, cognitive dysfunction decline is important, but what about cardiovascular dysfunction and decline? You can go this one. And I think what's sort of a secret, and it shouldn't be a secret anymore, is that actually 60% of players pass away from cardiovascular disease or heart disease. 60% of players. That is 4 times as high as those who pass away from all neurodegenerative diseases. So the secret that's been kept in a lot of ways is that heart disease is the biggest challenge to former players right now. So you can go this one. And so our role for the Football Players' Health Study is to ask, how does football impact the heart and vascular health? And in turn, how does that impact that really high mortality rate that I just said, cardiovascular dysfunction, heart disease, and death? No, back one. But the benefit to looking at heart disease, other than the fact that we've got so much loss related to it, is that there is so much we can do. There are pharmacological, lifestyle, behavioral, dietary interventions that we know, science has shown over years, to reduce risk of heart and vascular disease, right? So we have this incredible opportunity to step in and do something. So you can go to the next one. And what's really odd, another secret that's been kind of kept, is that the heart and the brain are really closely tied. So when the heart doesn't do well, the brain doesn't do well. And it seems like common sense, but it's largely not discussed, I think, in the football health community. And so in some ways we see this as a 2-for-1, because if we can go after heart and vascular health and make real changes there, yes, I think we can pull down that cardiovascular number, but we also have the chance to protect brains long term. So it's kind of a 2-for-1. But we don't just look at the brain, and we don't just look at the heart. So you can go to the next one. We actually do a lot more. This is in some ways the Gordian knot that, that Ross was showing. So we also look at things like testosterone and hormone health. We look at sleep, and we look at musculoskeletal health. So we're looking at all of those things with our eye, in the long term, on this cognitive dysfunction, mobility and pain, and cardiovascular health. You can go to the next one. But again, whole player, whole life. To do our job right, we have to do a few extra things. We've got to look at childhood. How you lived your life as a kid absolutely affects your health later. So we ask those questions. We also look at what are called social determinants of health, and I've learned so much about this from Drs. Whittington and Taylor. But a social determinant of health is something that impacts health long term over the lifespan. These are things like access to resources, experiences with racism and discrimination, dietary, smoking. All those things are going to impact throughout the entire lifespan. So as a study, we're going after everything. We are ambitious. So you can go to the next one. And so you look at this, and it's like, in some ways, it's designed to look overwhelming, and in some ways, it's overwhelming to me as a scientist, because our job is to go after every single one of those arrows. But it's also, for players and doctors and their families, this is actually a really positive story. The systems are so intertwined that if we can do something, every one of these arrows is an opportunity for intervention. And so if you can improve sleep, you impact the brain, you improve the heart, and you decrease pain. If we can address low testosterone, which is a massive problem, we're going to improve the brain, we're going to help the heart, and we're going to increase mobility. So what looks intimidating to me as a scientist, every single one of those nodes is a chance to step in and do something. So, okay. So one of the questions that we have when our hypotheses says, all right, look, if professional football is doing all of these things to the different systems in the body, do we see some of those long-term outcomes a little bit earlier? So one of the biggest pieces of research of our work comes directly from players, right? They are the experts, not us. And what we've said or heard, what we've heard is that players feel older than their age. And this kind of dovetailed with physicians saying, in some domains, these guys look older than I would have expected. And so our job is to ask, why is it that guys who look exceptional in their 20s and 30s and their teens, in their 40s and 50s are getting conditions that we associate with older age? This is a question that we're asking ourselves. And is football weathering men out a little bit early in some ways? So on the right, this is not data, this is just a graphic. But we're sort of asking, if we think about age over time as that black line, and as you get older, yes, aging catches us all. And it goes, issues related to aging do go up. But what we think might be happening for football players is shown in the red line. And what that basically is saying is there might be multiple things that are synergistically aging players early. Things like high blood pressure, head injury, exposure to racism, depression. We think that all of those things may be interacting with one another. And if we can understand it, we have the power to bend that trajectory from the red back to the black. And that's what we're trying to do. So you can go next one. So if any of you have been following our work, we are constantly talking about these things. High blood pressure, obesity, high cholesterol, anxiety, depression, low testosterone, sleep, pain. These come up all the time. And the reason, I might need to do it twice, is that they are really common in football players, more common in football players than they are in the general population. Everything except diabetes. At least for this group. So we want folks to really get to know this list of conditions. What we've learned, which was really unexpected in some ways and wasn't known before, is that a number of these are related to head injury in ways you wouldn't expect. We've figured out that head injury makes guys more likely to have high cholesterol, more likely to have high blood pressure, sleep apnea, which is a new one for us, low testosterone. We're finding out, as we tease apart the pathway between football play and later life health, we're finding out all the little pieces along the way. So you can go next one. Something that's going to come up a lot today is that these conditions in someone without a single head injury are going to cause cognitive problems. If you don't sleep well, you're going to have trouble the next day with memory, with concentration. If your testosterone is low, these are going to create problems in cognition that you're going to see. So one of the things we're trying to say to folks is, these things are going to cause cognitive problems in anyone. So we want to be on the lookout and not be quick to attribute them to one thing or another, but to go after these conditions. Which leads to the last slide, which is every single one of these are treatable or manageable. There are so many conditions for former players, and we can do something about all of them. And so, yeah, maybe they are common in players. Maybe they are related to head injury. Maybe they're causing cognitive symptoms, but they are also treatable. Yeah. And so what it comes down to me, really, is the serenity prayer. Hopefully most people know this prayer. And what it comes down to as a scientist and for our team that cares deeply about players is there's some things we can't change. Can't go back and undo the head injury. We can't go back and take away someone's NFL career, but we wouldn't want to. In fact, the players we speak to, none of them would go back and erase those years from their lives, but they're in the past. The things that we can change is sleep apnea, low testosterone, all of these things are addressable. So as we look under the light of the lamppost, as a study, we're guided by the concept that we can go after most of these things. So you can go to the next one. So to this end, I think out of a conversation with a player, we developed this checklist. And what we want is for physicians, for those of you in the room, and family members, we want physicians to see the player, we want them to see the man first and the player second. We want when players go to their doctors with this checklist for them to go after all of these conditions because they're going to improve the heart, they're going to improve the brain, and they're going to improve pain. So these are the pieces that we want. They're on your table, they're outside, take them for your friends. If nothing else but word about this checklist gets out, we'll feel like we did a really good job. So the last piece is just to express on behalf of our study gratitude to all of the players who have participated. If you're in the room, you're a part of this story and you're making it possible for us to answer these questions. We also thank our player, family, and spouse advisory board, some of whom are here, who have absolutely guided us in the right direction. If you have yet to join our study, we love the idea that you might consider filling out a survey for us. If you have filled out a survey for us, please do another. We really can't do the work without you all, and we are 50 players short of 5,000, and that would be such a powerful number to reach for us. We also want to say to players in this room and elsewhere that you don't have to be unhealthy to join. Like, we can't study player health without healthy players, right? And if you're suffering with some condition and you don't know what to do with it, you want answers, we can't answer those questions unless you're part of a study. Maybe it's ours, maybe it's someone else's, but we really hope that for folks who want answers, that they join studies so that we can get those answers. We're just getting half the story if we're only getting ill players or older players or white players. We want players of color, we want young players, we want everyone to join. So on that note, thank you for listening.